Hi, everybody. This is Bill Mercer. I want to invite you to watch a podcast we did on Territory Marks with Zach and Paul. It's really been fun to relive the adventures of world-class championship wrestling and the world of wrestling. So tune in. The two guys are great, and you'll have a lot of fun and learn a lot.
Hey there, loved ones. Marc Lowrance here. On an exciting mission, I'm searching for Bill Mercer, and we think we found him. Bill was, of course, the great broadcast legend that covered the Kennedy assassination in 1963 for the news in Dallas, CBS, I think. Went on and did the Dallas Cowboys in their early years as their play-by-play guy. Was the Texas Rangers' first announcer at Arlington Stadium, and did that for a couple of years before moving to the Chicago White Sox. And then, of course, he landed with the wrestling promotion, owned by the Von Erichs, and was there when I came along. Bill is 98 years old. He's living in a very nice complex in North Texas. I have made the trip over here today in hopes to find him and facilitate the podcast that Territory Marks and $2 Late Fee are going to produce for you via Zach Schaefer and Paul London. I have done a podcast with them and am going to go and do another one here down the road. So I'm here mainly today to support Bill.
Come in. Marc Lowrance. Good God, you are tall.
Bill Mercer.
Yay, buddy.
Well, you know what they say, and I said it once before, and I'll say it again. God's frosting, silver fox, what have you. I think we're bringing a whole new thing in here, but
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and Bill and I are each equipped with what we call a solar-powered sex machine.
I like it. Yeah. Now we're talking.
What is sex? Hey, Paul, I still get letters from fans with little pictures that I'm supposed to sign. So it's wrestling is keeps me in the run all the time.
I love it. As you should. I'll send you a picture as well to hopefully get timing appropriately. Going from the solar power comment, those will all be PG wrestling pictures, of course.
well, I was going to say, and we have Marc Lowrance joining us as well, but we'll get to all the flowers in a minute. But if Armand Hussein was here right now, he might have a different photo. Isn't that right, Mark? You're off camera, but
I told that story to a buddy of mine this morning, and he laughed till he fell through the phone.
I am not going to I'm not going to say what that story was, but it was great. Look, this is a really big deal. Some might say the biggest deal that Paul and I have had on our show, besides Mark. Bill Mercer is with us today. Bill and I, a little quick backstory. Bill and I met very briefly at the premiere of the Iron Claw film about a year ago in Dallas, Texas. And he was with his granddaughter, Rachel. And Rachel and I communicated and were able to make this happen. I know Bill is very much, partial, but in the brief moment I had to talk to Rachel, she just seems like a fantastic person. And big shout out to her for making this all happen with Paul and I. But Bill, and like I said, Marc Lowrance is here. He's in the room with Bill as well. And big thanks to Marc Lowrance as well for making this happen technology-wise. But Bill Mercer, the man, it is a pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, it's really an honor for me to be with you. We've talked a little. I know something about your show, and it's always great to, talk to fans, talk to people, whether they're fans or not.
Oh, we're fans.
We're
and
definitely fans. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that Paul and I are the biggest fans of 70s era territory wrestling, 80s era territory wrestling, territory wrestling in general, but something about world-class championship wrestling. It's a connection that we have very strongly, and share. And that was kind of one of the loves that brought Paul and I together. And we talk more about world-class championship wrestling, I believe, than we do any other territory back in the day.
It's true. We've covered a lot of, some Memphis, Portland, AWA, but predominantly it's been world class. We just keep finding ourselves sending each other these matches that we'll stumble upon, be like, oh, you have to see this. And it's contagious. It's contagious. And so much of that is due to the atmosphere that both you and Mark brought to watching that as a viewer. It's something that is it's addictive, really. That's how I spend most of my nights still. Thank goodness for YouTube.
Right.
It's just watching matches. So
Bill, because you are such a legend in this business and there's so much to cover and we only have so much time, could you take us back in the way, way, way back machine? Little reference to Peabody from Bullwinkle. Could you take us back to the way back machine of when you got started in your career with professional wrestling?
Well,
If you're able to.
I'll do it quick because, this business has surprises for you occasionally, many times. But I was just starting broadcasting in my hometown of Muskogee, Oklahoma. I was on radio doing all the sports, radio, baseball, football, basketball, boxing, and that was all they told me. I was happy to do that. But about a week later, they said, by the way, we're going to do professional wrestling in the city auditorium. And I said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I have not seen wrestling, much less done it. And they said, oh, if you can do these other things, you can do that. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? And they said, well, right now, the promoters down at the city auditorium with a couple of wrestlers. And if you go down there, you can talk to them about how to recognize holes and all that. So I went down there and I had a legal pad and I wrote down the name of the hole and then a description of it. And these wrestlers would tell me. So I had a whole legal pad of holes. And then I had to remember what they looked like, which I couldn't do anything with that. And when I did the first show, I thought, golly, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But I started out and I realized that it was a lot like play-by-play. And I knew how to do play-by-play well. So I just kind of did play-by-play of the wrestling and not, all this screaming and yelling and raving like some guys do in this stuff.
Right.
And it kind of worked. And so I did that for 3 years up there. And here's another funny thing. A friend of mine who had left Muskogee to go to another station dropped into Dallas to visit Wilson Shelley, the chief announcer at KRLD. And Wilson told this young man, a friend of mine, I've got to have somebody to do wrestling on Tuesday night at the Sportatorium. And this guy says, well, I know the greatest one in the world. Little overkill there, right?
A little bit. Well,
3 years doing radio. So Wilson called me, said, you've been recommended about wrestling, and could you come down and audition to see if we could use you on this TV station as well? And I said, sure. So I took the dear old Katy train and rode it down to Dallas, did an audition. I don't know if we did anything with wrestling. I guess I just talked about what I knew. And I auditioned on television and came home. And the next week they called me and said, you got the job. That's how I started. And I came to Dallas and started working Tuesday night, scared to death doing that first few weeks on TV live, trying to do the wrestling that I had seen on a legal pad and put it into the ring.
Right.
And that was the way it started, and it got better and better and better, I guess. And then CBS took that time at Sportatorium that we were using, took it away from KRLD, and we had studio wrestling, which was an enjoyable kind of thing over in the KRLD studios. And it was getting to that point where I was really personal with the wrestlers, and I know Fritz then, and it was working very well. And one day, a couple of the reporters from the Times Herald, which was right across the street, the newspaper, came over and they said, "We want to watch this." I said, "Okay." And I told Fritz about it, and one of the wrestlers, and on cue, they said, "Well, today we got a couple of these reporters over here, and they write terrible stories about us, and boy, after this bout's over, we're ready to take care of them."
Oh, no.
So they got up and left, went over across the street. Well, I got Fritz then to go across the street, and we got on their floor, and he started yelling, "Where are so and so and so and so? I want to see those guys." And everybody in that floor of the Times Herald was cringing.
They did their own invasion angle, if you will. They invaded the paper.
But that's how it kind of developed into this association that we had with live wrestling and people that enjoyed going down there and watching it. It was so different then, and I did that for years until I got into baseball and and had to leave. I was gone a while, and did even doing the Cowboys, I managed to get wrestling in. And so then something ended, and I was back in Dallas, and I worked at KVIL, and I guess I was doing some wrestling then.
Okay.
Fritz called. Yeah, Fritz called me. That's right, and wanted me to come back. So while I was at KVIL, I did wrestling. And then a young man named Mickey Grant and Mickey was kind of a gopher at the radio station, but he loved to do film. He was into doing film, and then we started talking about wrestling on the side between the working area, and he said, "What can we do to make wrestling more enjoyable?" And I said, "Well, we could add some personal relationship stories, or we can put a lot more color in it." He and I talked, and we did that for a long time. And then he actually went out and did a couple of films, came back, and got a job at Channel 39, which was basically a religious station for us here in Dallas.
Okay.
And then he called me one day and he said, "I think we've got it." It was like it was a secret. He said, "They need a program, and I've suggested wrestling, and they think it would be good for the average person. It might even make sinners feel good." And I said,
"Wait, did you say it might even make sinners feel good?"
"Yeah."
That's hilarious.
Wow.
And so, anyway, we put it together, and we auditioned one show, and what we did was really a takeoff of everything. We put a camera up on the handheld camera on the ring, and we also put microphones around so we could get better reaction. And we told the wrestlers who were scared to death that it was going to be, you're going to take tight shots of your holes. And at first they didn't like the idea, but once they realized that people were looking at their great muscles and all this stuff, they really got into it. And and then we decided, well, these guys are in the ring, and we had a young lady named Sunshine, and who was one of the first women to be a part of an act.
Oh, yeah.
Pardon?
She was a valet.
Yeah, she was valet.
Right.
And gorgeous Jimmy Garvin was her buddy in the ring. And she was there a while and then went away. And then another lady came in the ring with gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. And we were doing little features
Right.
about that we could come up with. The one that was with Sunshine was she and Jimmy Garvin did this bout with somebody, and if they won, doesn't happen. If they lost, they had to work on Kevin's farm.
Yeah, let me interject there for a moment, because I really want to ask you about this. The Valet for the Day match is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with David Von Erich and the on their ranch, correct?
Right.
So that is one of my and Paul, I believe, one of our favorite vignettes of World Class, and it is so hilarious.
Well, I think it's very exciting, very fun. So let's go back to that exciting days in yesteryear when Garvin had to be valet to David Von Erich. A big day with David Von Erich as gorgeous Jimmy Garvin and Sunshine plays a part of valets for you. Oh, this must be a big, big occasion.
It's a great day for Dave because today Jimmy Garvin's going to learn what it means to have a full day's work.
You got a plan?
All day long.
Well, come on, Von Erich, let's get the thing started, man. Let's get the thing started. I want you to know right now I'm not going to be enjoying myself.
Okay, let's start it up by you getting out of the car.
Okay, I'm out of the car. Now, what do you want me to do? I'm out of the car. Let me tell you one thing. Let's get one thing straight right now. The only reason I'm here, Von Erich, is because my lawyer told me I had to be here, okay? Because if I wasn't here, I couldn't wrestle nowhere in the United States. Do you understand me, Von Erich?
I understand you well enough, Garvin. You stand in my face again, I'll knock you down.
What do you want?
I want you to get out of my way, open the door for Bill Mercer, my valet, and meet me behind the house in the back 40. Open the door.
Like in the back 40, open the door for Mr. Bill Mercer. I know it's some kind of joke with you, Von Erich. Walk is harder. I don't want to walk, Von Erich. I don't want to walk. You think this is some kind of joke? I can tell right now that this ain't gonna work out at all. I can tell right now. Walk, walk, walk is hot. I don't want to walk. Walk.
We'll put links in our interview to that vignette specifically so people can watch and get context of what it is. It is so funny, and you are having to maintain a straight face the entire time. Throughout this chaos, you know, David shooting off his shotgun and
Quit your belly aching, Garvin.
Right,
Quit
right.
your belly.
Are you was that challenging as a you know, like, you came into this sport with a legal notepad, like you said, and continued on with it, doing other jobs as well, like Texas baseball and football, whatnot, and also having a scholarly career as well, right? And was it challenging for you to maintain that like, did you have a kayfabe of your own, kind of go working with World Class?
I tried to maintain an aloofness if I could. And also, if I had to take part in it, sort of like that visit to the ranch,
Yeah.
then I could feel that and know what was happening and play off the Sunshine and gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, whoever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just sort of, I think part of this, I've got to explain this too. I loved acting, and I was the best actor in North Texas State University. Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, when I was in college.
Oh, really?
Got the best actor award. And then I got married, and I thought I'd like to go into acting. And my wife said, "But you can't live on it." But
Yeah,
I would do it.
tell my wife about that.
Yeah, my whole family.
Wherever I was, and I could do community acting shows or something like I did in Dallas, in the area, I would do it. And so I felt like I was in an acting situation play. And we
Totally.
yeah, that's the way I looked at it. And I was the kind of side. I wasn't the lead actor. They were the lead actors, and I just had to kind of do the talk over with them.
Yeah.
So it was funny that I always had acting in mind when I was thinking about doing wrestling. They were actors and athletes, and then we were doing this. So it was always a challenge. But the worst challenge I had, we did these little vignettes all the time, and there was a wrestler, Marc, what was the guy that liked water so much? Remember? Like water. Anyway, there was a wrestler. And he talked about water, and everything that we had was water.
Okay.
So one day they called me and said, "Hey, this guy is out at the water slide in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay.
We got to go out there. I want you to go out there and interview him." And I said, "Okay." And so we put on my usual interview clothes and went out to this water slide thing.
And you're wearing a suit at the water park.
Tie and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there on the side, and we're talking about water, and he's telling me all the great things about water. And he said, "You like water?" "Oh, I love water." He said, "Well," and he reached up and said, "Come join me."
Oh no.
And
Pulled you in.
He pulled me into the tub, and I said, "But I didn't like it this much." I said, "If you like water, no matter what you're wearing or what, you'll love it. And you're going to go down the water slide and then push me down the water slide."
Oh my God.
Wow.
Except that, of course, the guys had us all planned, and I didn't know it. And they said, "Now, Bill, you got to get back in there and do another rundown so the camera can catch you going by." And
No.
Oh my
I did
God.
slides down that thing, and it was great. One of the
No equipment was damaged, right? The microphone, you ditch it right before. Or did you pull it? Was it waterproof? There no water. Were there waterproof microphones at the time? I'm trying to think of the equipment.
TV person that one didn't tell me I was going to get drowned. But
It's in the budget.
those were the kind of things that we did, the sidelights and highlights of the wrestlers, and I think that really helped personalize them more as outside the ring.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I think the Valet for the Day shows David. I mean, David, I thought always showed personality very easily, but in that series of vignettes, it's a whole other level. I think anytime you're on location somewhere as well, it always advances the vignette, the promo.
One more sideline. After Sunshine left, Jimmy Garvin wasn't without a girlfriend or a valet.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, here comes this black-haired girl, beautiful girl, and she wasn't even introduced. I can't remember her name at the moment. And she's helping Jimmy Garvin, and nobody knows who she is. They asked me, I don't know who she is. So we decided, and after a few weeks went by, that they were pretty close. So I said, "Let's go. We'll take a TV unit over to his house. Maybe she might be there, and we could interview her."
Like an ambush?
Pardon?
Like an ambush?
Like an ambush.
Oh,
Guerrilla
geez.
filmmaking, man.
Please continue. Let me get my popcorn. Hold on.
Paparazzi.
Of course, some of this was already known.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I walk up with a camera behind me to the front door of Jimmy's house. And I ring the doorbell. And here she is, opens the door in a little kind of light.
It's a negligee.
Negligee, yeah.
As one does, yeah.
Yeah, in a negligee. And I said, "Hi," taken aback. "Is Jimmy here?" She said, "Yes, but he's been busy for a while." I said, "Well, could I interview you?" "No, I'm being busy too. Thank you." Close the door. Boy, that got a lot of reaction.
Yeah.
Did
But
that turn Garvin babyface? He was.
that World Class went on the air, and before long, we were syndicating all over the country.
Right.
And the program just took hold. We had all this personality involved, and as well as the wrestling, and then it started going overseas, and it was wild in that office with all the tapes that they had to send, and it turned out that I was the fifth most popular TV personality in Israel, and the Von Erich boys, David, Evan, and Kerry, were the three most popular TV stars in Israel. Wow. Well, I never went to Israel. Of course, they did, but that was all right. I was working at KVIL as well, and our lead guy got married, and he, as he got back from his honeymoon, he said, "You know what? I can't get away from you at all. I go into the hotel in London, turn on the TV, and there you are doing world-class championship wrestling." It was amazing how that just took off. Years later, I was at a little feature thing here, we were signing pictures and doing that. This is well past and the guy said, "Here's a little lady who's come to see you." And I looked up and I thought, uh-oh, I bet I know where she's from. And she lived in Israel. She was in Kansas City or someplace. And I don't know how she found out about the picture taking and the meeting me. And she had come down there, living in Israel. And she came over to talk to me, and she said, "When I was a little girl, I watched your wrestling program every week in their hometown."
Wow.
And every time they showed it, the shops would close, and everybody would go into a home and watch
Wow.
World Class in Israel.
Wow.
And it just was amazing how that show, just starting out as a plain little show, developed into such a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you about that because it really was, and for it to be a relatively small company versus a big juggernaut in Connecticut or New York, did that take you all by surprise? How kind of on fire World Class was in the early 80s?
Yeah, it was the office of World Class was separate from Fritz's wrestling show, and we had our own office, and they started getting requests for tapes so they could run the program, and they were just overcome.
Wow.
And we were all overwhelmed by the reaction. It took about, I guess, a month or two, maybe longer, but golly, they were just busy as heck, passing these shows out everywhere, and in the States too. But it was
you're
phenomenal what happened.
That was wrestling presented on TV in its best form at the time, I imagine. As you were talking about earlier, putting the microphones on the ring posts, doing these things that allowed the viewer more into the ring. It made the matches, you could feel it more. You could get a better look at the wrestlers, their muscles, like you were saying. I was curious about when you said earlier on, the workers, the boys being hesitant about the microphones. That must have been for kayfabe reasons, right? They thought it was going to break kayfabe. They thought they were going to things were going to get exposed. Is that probably the main reason, I would imagine?
I guess so. But they were, they had little signals things.
Sure.
I said, well, if you're going to scratch your eye anyway, you're going to scratch your eye. Whatever you're going to do is a normal thing. Just work out the normal movement, and you guys know it, and it won't. That people won't notice.
Right.
Nobody ever said anything about that, so it didn't hurt them at all. But they were. It's funny, they were sensitive when they were up in the ring by themselves, and you couldn't see them very well up there as you could with a video, and but nobody noticed anyway. It just, they realized that pretty quick, and they really they played to the camera after that.
I mean, I think if anything, that could have possibly led to a lot of I don't know if it's revolutionizing it, but just it surviving and adjusting as a period of that where I was extremely fortunate and grateful to be broken in by territory legends in my, especially in my eyes, in Ivan Putski and in Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk. And so the ways they taught me and the things they broke in with me, and Scott Putski as well helped me a tremendous amount as well, to be honest. And so, but I would like to think that the wrestling had to have changed to adjust for the viewer now being in the ring with them. So, you can't communicate as freely as you could before. And as you were saying, sure, you can come up, with things here and there, giving them the office or whatever. And it's, to me, that's working. That's work, is working on the fly, letting the audience not dictate your match, but they are a part of it.
Yeah.
And in some cases, hell, they might dictate it. I don't, depending on the promoter, he runs out there and we're flipping it, But yeah, I think that is revolutionary. But in the microphone, the camera, in the ring, all that.
They asked me to come into the meetings when they were working on how a match was going to be determined and all that. And I said, no, I don't want to know. I don't know what you're doing and what the end is.
Really?
I want to be surprised.
Okay.
I don't want to know anything. I just want to be surprised, and I'll react to it. And they said, well, that's different. I said, no, it's just I could react to a football game and baseball. I said, you just go ahead and do it, and I'll follow it. And so it was really going great. But what happened was David Von Erich died in Japan.
Yeah.
And that he was I guess he was the leader of the feeling of the boys. And he was very intelligent and probably would have taken over the promotion someday, but that just knocked it just almost destroyed everything.
Yeah.
And then Kevin was there, and then Kerry and Mike were gone by their own hand.
Yeah.
And by then the show was gone. And so nobody ever picked up the same ideas that we had. I sometimes accidentally watch wrestling on some other channel today, and there's nothing that makes me want to watch.
No, I think that, yeah.
So it was the death of the Von Erich boys, that really killed that show, and that was it. It was their show, really, and filled that with all the best wrestlers that would come in and wrestle. And we had all the great ones there.
Well, I think oftentimes people watch television and have a favorite show, and then the show ends and they go, man, I wish there was just one more season, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about wrestling, it never just ends. However, in the
This
case of in the case of World Class, or in the case of, you know, the AWA, or and I think, you know, sadness aside, there is something beautiful about a season, and having that season, whether it be, you know, 6 years or so or whatever, capsulated in like that. And
right,
you, as well as Mark, you both, you know, your voices at that time, which pretty much sound the same, by the way, like, you know,
Absolutely.
at 98 years old, I doubt you would want to go in the commentary booth. However, at 98 years old, your voice still sounds pretty much the same. Um, it's a beautiful thing to have this time capsule of this era that you're a part of.
right.
And I gotta wonder though, or I gotta imagine, you were saying, and just going back to when World Class was really blowing up and the demand was more intense for product, that had to be very demanding on you as well as a commentator, right?
Yeah, it was, and the shows just lost their substance, you know, and we had to follow through on it. It was well, you know, I really kind of get sad about that because it was such a good show,
Yeah.
and things that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
There were outs. Gino Hernandez got shot down. All sorts of terrible things
Right.
went on around in that time. And Kerry had his problem and left us on his own volition. So it was a slow, tragic end, and it was just over. Suddenly
Right.
it was over, and Kevin and I and some other guy, we thought about trying to get a wrestling show going, but there wasn't anything. There was nothing we could do. And
When you
that
were
was,
done, with World Class, where did your career take you?
oh, I just did my other stuff, football and whatever I was doing, I was always doing something outside. Like you said, probably wouldn't want to commentate today, but I would if I could see better, and if I had the energy, I'd love to be doing something like baseball, or even if we had a show like this, do it in the ring.
Mark, for
I don't know
those,
if you all see this or not, but this is a picture of Dodger great Don Drysdale. And Don Drysdale was Bill's color man with the Texas Rangers the first year the Rangers were here, and Bill and Don became very good friends.
Right. Great
no
friend.
kidding. Wow.
Yeah, we had so life went on, but it certainly has the product today that I see has nothing to compare it to.
No,
No.
Paul
I
hit.
make the joke,
Okay.
yeah, I make the joke that especially with Raw in particular, because I was on that show for a while. I was on SmackDown more than I was on Raw, but just in being there, one thing I always missed were the metal guardrails, which with World Class, there was, I think, maybe a rope at one point, but there were never guardrails,
Straight.
right? So that's
Yeah.
part of what allowed that wild, ruckus atmosphere to permeate. And so I always make the joke that Raw is anything but Raw. If it should be called Monday Night Overcooked, because it's overproduced. It's overproduced. You know, there's no sense of danger on the fan standpoint.
Yeah.
And sadly, breaking kayfabe seems to be the thing to do, where I've always thought, if you think kayfabe is dead, then you're part of what is trying to end it, or that you lack the commitment to follow it through. Kayfabe is never dead. But
I know it's so popular, so
yeah,
they have these big shows, and that's great. But you know,
it's
that's
not
it.
the same.
Paul,
It's not the same.
Paul had said, Paul, you and I just discussed a match between Ravishing Rick Rude and Michael P.S. Hayes versus Kerry Von Erich and the Iceman King Parsons. And you are while you're commentating, you're in the middle of hyping up the 3rd annual David Von Erich Memorial, right? This is in like April of 1986, I believe. April or May. And Paul had said he made the connection of improv. When you are improving with another actor, and Bill, you are very well familiar with improv, being an actor in college and whatnot. That art of improv and not and feeding off of the other performers, right, in the ring. Same can be said with the commentary. Like you said, you didn't want to know ahead of time about the outcomes. And so there was this improv play as well. Your words were so valuable to the driving of the match.
Absolutely.
I brought up Iceman and that specific point, not only because Paul brought up the improv or mentioned improv, but Iceman King Parsons. Can you reflect on him specifically? Do you have any recollections of working with Iceman King Parsons?
Oh, Iceman, he was a delight. It really was.
That's great.
Briefly, and he always used to say when we talk, well, sometimes, Bill, it just bees that way.
That's really cute.
It just bees that way. He was just a delightful guy, and took his blows, did his job. Those guys were fantastic. We just had such a great group of people that worked in the ring, and he was always fun. He was always fun.
That's
the Freebirds. You haven't mentioned them.
Yeah.
The Freebirds and I had this running battle all the time. They were arrogant, as you know, and were always better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally, I remember one time in specific, particularly, it had gone very well for them, and they said, "Well, what?" After the battle was over, we were talking. He said, "Now, Bill, we want you to come and have lunch with us next such and such." I said, "Okay." So we brought the TV camera and all that out to drive-in.
Okay.
And there they were, Freebirds. I said, "Hi, guys." They said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, you invited me to lunch. We wouldn't invite you to anything." That was the kind of thing where I had to react. But you did. But that's all right. Can I just have lunch with you? "Oh yeah, that's all right. But you got to pay." Let's see. What was the?
I believe it.
What was the big guy from? We said was from Africa.
Oh, Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala. And so we wanted to recreate the atmosphere of the
Ugandan forest.
The forest in Africa.
Okay.
So we went between the railroad tracks, and where the grass was real high, and Kamala was there, and he so we became man, and I was going to interview him, and something happened that he made a mistake and didn't even think about it, and lunged for some reason and just knocked me right over in the grass on my back. And so I was saying, well, he got a little excited about that, and that kind of way. Are you all right? He said, "You all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine with it." He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Okay." So we went on.
So
Every time I'd seen later, I'm not doing a show just with him, seeing, he'd say, "Bill, I'm still sorry I knocked you over."
We're here on the beautiful estate of Mr. Akbar, the man. You've met him before, and I thank you, sir, for having us out here. I wonder why we're meeting in this forest rather than up on the hill at your beautiful mansion.
Well, first of all, Mercer Kamala must be kept in his natural surroundings. Otherwise, he will suffer from culture shock. This is the reason you're meeting me here, Mercer.
So this is his normal environment, then?
Exactly.
Now, who are these men with you? I know Mr. Kumar to your left. Would you introduce the others?
Meet the Mongol, 300 pounds plus, internationally known wrestler. And by the way, the problems in this area have become more so. This explains the presence of the Mongol in the general stable at this time.
And the man over here with the helmet on?
Meet Friday, the caretaker of Kamala. He is with Kamala constantly. He is with him at all times. He is more or less, as I've said before, his caretaker.
All right, now speaking of Kamala, could you bring him in so we could meet him?
Well, of course, but I must have assurance from the cameraman that there will be no sudden flash bulbs, no disturbances of any kind, because this man could become uncontrollable. Dynamite, as you Americans say at times.
Well, I'm sure that our cameramen, the reporters, will not bother us here. Tell me about the situation now with your bringing in Kamala.
Well, of course, it's a twofold situation. First of all, as you know, Kabuki has been injured by Hussein and that dog Yatsu. And, of course, Kamala will take care of that situation. The other is the Von Erich family, the snotty-nosed young punks called the Von Erichs, who have been in this area much too long, and in due time, we shall get to that situation, I assure you. Now, this man, the Mongol, as I've said before, he is Devastation himself, and a welcome member to Devastation Incorporated. And now, Kamala is on his way, 6'9", 385 pounds, and as I've said before, he is uncontrollable at moments, Mercer.
Well, he is an awesome sight. I would like to hear him speak in his native tongue, though. Could you say something for him? Hey, watch it. Look out. Hey.
When that water slides being knocked over in the grass, it was all worth it for what we had there.
Well, I think there was something, there's a charm about you and Mark being so professional, working amongst these wild child, so to speak, and it added to this air of realism, because commentators that we grew up with anyways were very professional in that respect, and let everything else unfold versus becoming a part of the landscape of craziness. And I got to ask you though, because Mark and you are in the same room together, and Mark, I feel like I've adopted a little bit of the cadence and the way you talk, because that's just what I do. I end up mimicking things. Do you have any memories of working with Mark that stand out? Is there something, a story you could tell, or maybe the two of you together?
Gosh, I can't remember.
And you're not going to offend him if you can't recall anything.
Well, think, Bill, about Fritz's fascination with religion.
Oh, yes, religion.
And the guy with us, the evangelist.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Did he work with you?
Well, yes, unfortunately.
Well, oh, poor Fritz. He got religion. And,
He got religion. Like we get a cold.
and I'll back up a little bit because I think of something that when David died, we had a meeting out at the farm, their farm. And it was going to be something that I thought we just planned something later on. But he was talking about how God wanted us to be sure that his memory was kept by everybody.
Okay.
And I didn't think I didn't know God was interested. But anyway, so that was what, and that was when, and in the movie, they do this pretty well. David's gone, and the champion wrestler, the world champion, was going to be in town such a time. So Fritz religiously thought it through and put Kerry Von Erich in instead of
Kevin, right?
Yeah. And it just, and that was a part. And of course he won.
Right.
But a few weeks later, he lost the battle someplace else. But yeah, then that worked so well with his religious background that I didn't know he came to you, but he came to me one day and he said, Bill, my minister, who he kept pushing all the time, talking about, I think would be a good color man for you, wouldn't he? And I said, no, he wouldn't. I didn't, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm not irreligious, but I didn't want a preacher on with me.
To do color?
Yeah, to do color.
Yeah. World class. He wanted you to do color with the preacher on world class. This was Chris's idea?
No, this was Fritz's idea.
Fritz's idea. I heard Chris earlier, and I thought, okay, that might seems okay. Fritz, wow.
And I flat out said, no, I'm not. I don't want to on. I can't. I don't. That doesn't fit the program or the conversations or anything.
Right.
And I didn't get into talking about religion on a wrestling show. So that was what I did.
During this time, I wound up in Fritz's office one day. I don't remember why, but Fritz was seated at his desk, and I was on the sofa next to him. And all of a sudden, he brings the religion card out, and he said, "Mark, to work for me, you must be a born-again Christian."
Oh, my God.
Do you know what to be a born-again Christian? I will only allow born-again Christians. And about that time, the phone rang, and it was Kathy White, his secretary, in the next room. And Black Jack Mulligan had called in and wanted to talk to Fritz. Turned out he was mad about his payoff. And so Fritz picks up that landline phone, had those buttons on it for the different lines.
Right.
And he listens to Black Jack, and he starts in, "Well, you GD son of a," uses the F word, just obscene, profane, slams the phone down, and without even a pause, he looks back at me. "Now, Mark, to work for me, you must be."
Well, that's interesting, because one day I'm just walking around there, and Fritz comes up and said, "Bill, are you a Christian?"
Oh, wow.
What the heck is this? I said, "Well, Fritz, it's none of your business."
Yeah, that's I love that. That's a great response.
But I said, because what I am is what I am, but that's my personal life, and you don't have to know about it.
That's a beautiful thing.
He didn't say anything else to me.
Wow, look at that. Wow, that's impressive.
He had heard about the wrestling on a religious station in Dallas.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta ask you, you mentioned the Iron Claw, the movie The Iron Claw, and that is of course where we met, and your granddaughter Rachel too. Another shout out to Rachel. Michael Harney portrayed you in the film, Bill Mercer. And, I'm just curious, how did you think that he did playing you in the film?
Well, he and I talked later, and I told him I thought he did well. The only thing that was a problem, I was 5'7.5", and he's 6 feet tall.
Yeah, he's huge.
And much of the sympathy I got in the ring was being a lot shorter than those wrestlers.
Right.
And he was with them, so that was the only thing I thought was out of whack. But I thought he did pretty well with the voice and that's the few times he was standing with the wrestlers. my part was really secondary, but yeah, I thought he did all right. If
Yeah,
he'd been
it's
short, it'd been great.
there is a great moment in the film where he is playing you, interviewing, I believe it's David, or it's Kevin. It might be Kevin, actually. I think it's Kevin. Yeah, and David's off camera, kind of rousing him a little bit. It's a really fun scene. Yeah, doing a promo. And when you were doing promos with the guys backstage or whatnot, and this could go to Mark too, what did was that an accurate depiction as to how these guys would do their promos, where it was just sometimes it was a train wreck and getting through it was or was it effortless?
Oh, I think I believe that was yeah. He was trying to do Carrie, wasn't he?
I think that it's Kevin trying to, it's Zac Efron playing Kevin Von Erich trying to, and then it was before David had kind of come into the ring with Kevin.
I was trying to interview somebody for a promo.
Okay.
Really. And I would ask a question and I'd say, no, what are you going to do when this happens? And he'd start to say, well, I'm going to do this. And then he said, I can't do this. And I think that's what you're saying you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I actually did that with Carrie or Mike, somebody, but I believe it's Carrie.
It probably was Carrie, but I mean, look, the film took a lot of liberties, obviously, with a lot of issues, and that's a whole other conversation. But
no, I was curious. When you came into the fold, there must have been did you feel, especially back then, the wrestling business was much more cliquish and closed door. So coming in from the outside, so to speak, due to your commentating expertise and your voice and your play-by-play stuff, did you feel initially that the locker room was kind of closed off to you? And then if you did, what if there was a moment where you felt that they fully embraced you and were like, yeah, you're one of ours. If we see anyone messing with Bill out in the parking lot, we're gonna, beat the crap out of, like, you're protected now. Do you know what I mean? Like, how did you feel in that time?
I'm sure that it took a while to ingratiate myself into the closed club, but I would go in the dressing room and just talk to them, ask questions, and after a while, it became kind of like going into a football dressing room where they said, "Oh, here's Bill," and they got to know me in there, and then they, I guess, would listen to the show and find out I didn't knock them or do anything like that, and it takes a while to get into athletes' minds and friendship and all that.
Yeah,
I never had anything bad happen. Well, the bad guys would give me trouble just for fun.
But did you find, I guess, with athletes, because it is the type of, you're performing, whether it's whatever sport, it's still a performance if there's an audience, if there's fans. I think a lot of that, there's a lot of crippling insecurity that a lot of guys harbor. A lot of crippling insecurity. And so it's funny you mentioned that they watched the show and saw that you weren't trashing them, because I was just thinking if somebody, had ever come up and kind of like, now don't you, you better be nice, you better say some nice thing. Or if maybe you had said something that maybe did kind of rub somebody the wrong way. Same with you, Mark. I don't know if, and obviously in that time when guys are experimenting with different things, substance abuse, whatever you want to call it, a lot of them can be pretty volatile or a little erratic, so like they might be really angry at you, but you weren't the one that actually caused the problem. You know what I mean? And so the guys were much bigger then too, compared to they are now. You know, the days of gladiators is scary.
You know, Paul, we talked on our previous time, and will again later,
Sure,
that Bill and I got criticized, especially by some of the top heels. Because remember, Bill is a scholar. He's an educated man. He's been in acting. He's studied debate.
Right.
He's teaching on a college campus. The vocabulary we would use, the satire we would offer, the occasional metaphor or sarcasm we would interject, they would complain that we were overshooting the audience, that we were too sophisticated. But what they didn't realize is, because we did that, we were able to reach a segment of society that never would have otherwise watched wrestling.
Right.
And help the promotion. We weren't the stars, but we helped.
Right. And I think that
You're
adds,
right,
I think that's one of the reasons why, well, our audience for Territory Marks and $2 late fee is an audience of wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans who go, what is this? I had never checked out wrestling in my entire life, but I'm going to listen to this interview. I'm going to watch this interview. So we want to paint that picture for the non-wrestling fans as well, so that they appreciate, and maybe they come to the table and watch your footage, you know, watching a vignette of you going to Jimmy Garvin's house and finding, was it Dark Journey maybe was there?
Let me follow on what Mark said.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
My wife and I belonged to a book club as well as the other stuff I did. And it was a big book club of 20 people. And so sometimes I'd come in and they'd say, how's the wrestling going? I said, so-and-so. I said, yeah, I saw that the other day. And so one day, finally, some of them said, listen, we've been skirting around this, but could we come down and watch wrestling live? Because we watch it on the and so I got them all tickets one time and brought them down there, and they were just poured out. They were so excited and kind of frightened and about the whole scene. But those people, book club people, you know, pretty intelligent people, and that worked their way into that to ask me to come, have them come down there. It became a great amalgamation of viewers, different types, of all types. Eileen and my wife, my doctor, one day came and said, well, you know, I'm really glad to see you guys and all this. Now I'm going home and I'm going to watch wrestling. I take my shoes off, I sit back in the chair, and I watch wrestling. As we went out the door, do we really want him?
funny.
He was joking, of course. He was a fine doctor, but he'd relax by watching the wrestling show. So little stories like that, I come out, you know, and you get these letters and things in the mail, and you realize what a wide audience we created in those days.
I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think something that often gets overlooked when people discuss wrestling is the non quote unquote non-wrestling fans who absolutely love it and are thrilled by it. And that's important to acknowledge too.
Right. Like that little lady who came all the way from Israel. And
Came down
to see me.
Right? How beautiful is that? I love it. I told you offline, I told you the other day, my grandfather had a bumper sticker, said, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Well, I feel like wrestling is a combination of those two things mixed together in a beautiful way. So there you go. Scott Kazan asked, a lot of guys who came out of world class towards the tail end, like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mick Foley. Did you have any experiences with either of them back in the day?
I knew Steve Austin because he was there right at the end, and but I didn't. I just faded away after that, and I didn't take him.
Austin came down and visited my church when I was a student pastor and still doing wrestling, and stayed for worship. Drove down there. Yep.
No kidding.
He's great.
That's cool. So one more quick question is from my mom, actually, because she was familiar with your acting career back in the day in college. Was there a performance that you'd had that you felt was a standout? Like what was one of your favorite performances as an actor back in the day?
Night Must Fall.
Was Night Must Fall a play that you're in?
Yeah.
And what did you?
He was a killer. The lead guy.
And what role did you play?
You were the killer?
I killed yes, I was a killer in that. And
I love it. That's great.
I strangled the lady I was rooming with.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was a challenge.
I bet. Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, Paul has been in quite a few movies. Was it the Babysitter Murders that you were in, Paul? Was that
It might as well have been called.
I'll let Paul say it as well, but this has been beyond an honor to have you on the show. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for being a part of this and being on our show with us.
Thank you so much.
I'm an old guy, and I get a chance to talk a little bit. That's great. I appreciate it. Nice to have Mark here to fill in my blank spaces.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think he did
so much.
Paul, good to see you.
What an honor. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. We're looking forward to seeing you next month.
Absolutely. Behind us on the wall is a great picture of a young Bill Mercer standing next to one of those old-timey, humongous, rolling TV cameras for, it says KRLD, back covering the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. This is a walking encyclopedia right here.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Obviously, our conversation was wrestling centered, but you are a national treasure, sir. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's like they say, being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the right time.
This is true too. This is true too. All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Mark, we'll see you soon. And Bill, I hope we get to see each other in person. If not, we will be virtual handshakes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks so much, Bill. Thanks, Mark.